Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in our weekly study in the Hebrew language, our Hebrew word study. I pray that you find it a blessing in your life as I have found it such a blessing in my life. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you a different verse. Normally, we have been going through the book of Samuel, but today I just feel like I want to share a different verse with you that has been uh, I don't know, made an impact, a strong impact in my life. And this is actually part of the daily Jewish prayer that's recited every morning when a Jewish man would wind what's called the tefillin, or it's those leather straps around their arm. And in those leather straps, if you do a word search on it or Google search, you'll find that this is in reference to the latter part of the Shema, where it says, "You shall take and bind the words of the Lord upon your forehead and upon your hand." And the Jews take this literally, and they take and wind these. Uh, Passages of scriptures, which is very direct on which ones they should include, which is Deuteronomy 6 and 4, and they wind it around their hands. And while again, this practice is only done today by very Orthodox Jews, and right now, in for us as New Testament believers, we hide God's word in our heart, in our mind. It's God's will is done through our hands, and I feel that is a fulfillment of this verse and this instruction. But yet, something that's jumped out to me is that while they are winding the leather straps around their hand, they quote Hosea chapter 2, verse 19 and verse 20. And so as I started just learning the prayer, trying to learn the Hebrew, this verse really began to speak to me, and I want to share it with you. And you'll see up on your screen here today, it's verse 19, Ve'erastik li le'olam, ve'erastik li besedek, uve'mishpat ve'chesed, uve'rachamim, and then ve'erastik li Be'emuna ve'yada'a et Yahweh. And this rhymes beautifully in the Hebrew, but what stuck out to me was the word of betrothal, and that as they're winding these leather straps around their hand and around their finger, they're doing it very similar to a marriage covenant, a marriage ceremony. In fact, my understanding is that this Hosea chapter 2, verse 19, is also quoted at a marriage ceremony on the talking about the betrothal. But looking at it here, the betrothal is not something that we say to God, but this verse is what God is saying to us. And I think, and for me, this is where the realization started to occur to me that many times as Christians, we were always very mindful of what we claim we do for God. We do these things, we go through these rituals. I've done my portion, if you will. I've followed the scriptures, and then we somewhat expect God to respond in, "Oh, you've done a great job," and while these are commandments, and if we feel God has asked us to do this, um, maybe it's just me, but sometimes I feel I rely too much on what I have done, and focus so much on my part that I really don't even take time to think about God's investment in me, on his part of what he has pledged. And as I'm reading through this, and the beautiful words that he has betrothed himself onto me, meaning taken me as his bride. And I began to just become somewhat overwhelmed in a good way on thinking that, how I struggle to keep my part of the bargain, how I struggle to keep my vows, if you will. But yet, I know that God will never fail in keeping his. And I just started maybe during this time taking my thoughts off of how badly I perform, how many mistakes I make, and how many times I fail, and started thinking about that He never fails and that His promise, I don't have to worry about Him going back on this promise of betrothing Himself to me. I also noticed that if you look at the verb form underneath here, this is in a PL form. It has a conjunctive perfect. It has the VOV conjunction, meaning as that he will, and so it's somewhat shown as a something that would happen in the future, but has really been perfected, meaning it has been accomplished. And so uh, I look at this and I say, this is a promise that has been accomplished, even though maybe it isn't fulfilled completely in my life. There is a promise that it will be, and in God's mind, it is fulfilled already. And the PL is showing the strongest intensity, the strongest emotion that you can show in the Hebrew verb system in the Hebrew language. So this is one of the strongest emotions that God can show, that God can have, is that He will betroth Himself onto us. He will keep His part of this covenant that He has established with us. And I just want to look at the English words here before we take a look at this word ve'erastik or rasha. Um, Aras, excuse me, uh, that he's keeping his promise, his covenant in righteousness, in justice, in two of the most beautiful words in the Bible, which are chesed and racham, in which is translated as loving kindness and mercy. And I love the translation I have heard about chesed, and that is when you deserve nothing and have no reason to expect anything, but then God gives us everything. That's the true definition of chesed, of this loving kindness of what God gives to us when we have no reason to demand anything, expect anything. And I know there are some people who feel, that they will look at scriptures that we deserve things from God, but when I look at this, I see I deserve nothing. I had no reason to expect anything, but God gave me everything. And He gave us His mercy, that rakam mercy, which is the love that a mother feels for her child in the womb before it's done anything wrong, before it's had any opportunity to do anything. To affect her life negatively by saying anything or doing anything disrespectful. That love, that pure love that she has for that child, is the same kind of love that God is showing here in this Recham. And then He will betroth us onto Him in faithfulness. That His interaction in our life would help us to be faithful. But what really I love here is this Vayara'at, and you shall know Yahweh. You shall know the merciful, compassionate side of God. You shall know the heart of God, and that through this betrothal, we will get to know God's deepest emotions, God's love, God's mercy, God's compassion through His name and everything it entitles and everything it encompasses. So I want to take a quick look as we kind of close this out here to look at this word that's H781. We click on it and we go to the root word with it, which is aras, and it means to betrothed. It's not used very often in the scriptures, 11 times. What's interesting is in Brown Driver Briggs, it talks about the connection with the Arabic. That was something interesting to learn, is that the Semitic languages, as they're called, which is Aramaic, Hebrew, that Arabic kind of grew out of this later on. So they are related. And it talks about the paying the price to gain the right of possession. And of course, being in a PL form, it has the deepest emotion, deepest intensity. We know it as a price paid to the father to give his bride away, kind of an endowment. Um, for this marriage to take place. And I think it's so beautiful to know that God looks at us in such a way. Now, of course, many may object to the thought of a purchase or a price, but just want to look at some of the other meanings here of how deeply this relationship, and let's get past the part that there was a price paid in monetary and maybe the old world way of how marriages were arranged, and look at the beauty of what this meaning is for us today in our relationship with God. It talks about here, this is the Hebrew and Chaldean lexicon by Gesenius. It talks about a root of building a bed, a couch with a canopy. The idea, what you see here, is the intimacy of the consummation of the marriage, that this betrothal is bringing about a very intimate and close relationship. And that is what we want more than anything else, is to have that close, intimate relationship with God. And here we see this is all spelled out in the meaning of this word, of how God looks at what he wants as a perfect relationship with us. We want to then jump over to the dictionary of the Targumim by Marcus Yastro, and look at what the Aramaic background is, which is taken from extra biblical literature, just to give us a more rounded look. And it's not used very often. In fact, I was surprised to find a very small entry here by Jastro, and we see it here with even just a different aspect. But I like the words that it uses. It's to weave, to arrange, and to plan. And I believe that fits in beautifully with the betrothal thought, that we are woven and knit together, intertwined, threads intertwined, lives intertwined, emotions intertwined together as threads are woven. And that's how our relationship with God is intended to be in his eyes. And then, of course, one last one that I want to go to is the Etymological Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew by Samson Raphael Hirsch. And Hirsch looks at the context of where this word was used in the relationship of how it fits in a society, and where its root came from. And as he looks at this word, eros, he says it's to exclude all others. It's to possess exclusively. And of course, what more beautiful words can you find or imagine to be said by God towards us, that he would have us as unto himself, excluding all others, and to possess us exclusively. And I just love this verse. This verse has been so beautiful of an impact in my life. I'm going to attach a PDF file that shows this word with a phonetic in the prayer from a Jewish prayer book, so that maybe if you feel like you want to practice it, and I know it may be a little hard and you may stumble through the pronunciation of the words, but trust me, you reach a point to where suddenly these words of him betrothing himself onto us and betrothing us in some of the most beautiful qualities that ever can be known upon the earth, of righteousness, of justice, of loving kindness, of mercy, of faithfulness, and of knowing him. To me, these encompass everything there is to know, or everything there is to experience about a relationship with God. And so I'll attach that as a PDF. I pray it's a blessing into your life. Again, I thank you so much for being a part of this class today. And I pray that God will continually and richly bless you in your walk with him. Have a good day. Bye-bye.